Dr. Deb, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's so good to be here, and I'm looking forward for both of us to be able to maybe change the minds of your audience just a little bit in terms of how they look at themselves, especially if they're in menopause, and how they look at food and how they look at their bodies. I hope we can do just a little bit of a twist to help them see something that they've never seen before by looking into their minds.
Yes, definitely. And let's start with your background. Can you share just a little bit about your training and who you are?
Well, very interesting. For my first career or my second career was I was a chiropractor for like 35 years, and I practiced with my husband, and we had a lovely practice, and I really enjoyed doing that for a lot of that time. But I got to the point in my 50s, kind of a lot of things hit in my 50s. Menopause hit in my 50s, frustration about my career hit in my 50s, and the weight on my body hit me in my 50s. And so it was a very much of a wake up period. And one of the things that I realized was that I had been a lifetime Weight Watcher for most of my life. And I felt like I was managing my weight because I was a lifetime Weight Watcher member. But the way that I was managing it, and I feel like I'm pretty smart and know a lot, but when it came to managing my weight, the way that I did it is that I would go to Weight Watchers when I gained the 30 pounds that I lost at Weight Watchers. And once I lost the weight, I stopped counting points and went and did what I always did, which was not paying attention to being hungry or full, but just feeling like I could do whatever I wanted with food because my weight was off. And
Mm,
I knew that when my weight came back on, which it would, then I would go back to Weight Watchers and do my point system. So my system is that it doesn't really matter. I mean, I was kind of aware of how bodies work, and yet when it came to my own, I wasn't really very respectful of it, but I thought I was.
mm. So it sounds like there was a little bit of some roller coaster action going
I
on.
would call it huge roller coaster
Yeah.
action, and I figure I probably lost about 250 pounds in that cycle time of gaining and losing weight. And when I hit my 50s, the same tricks that I used in Weight Watchers, which was to eat as much as I can for as many points as I could get, and the weight wasn't coming off,
Mm.
and it bothered me. And I also wasn't sleeping at night, and I was very moody. And my
Weren't you in
doctor said,
menopause at that point?
exactly, that's what I was going to say. Welcome to menopause.
Yeah.
And and I also was really not wanting to be a chiropractor anymore and very frightened of doing anything else and that I didn't think I could do anything else because I was too old. That was really like a common thought that I had in my head is that I'm
The
way too
old
old to
speak,
change.
right?
And what's really funny is that when I went to chiropractic school, I was 26. And I remember thinking the same thing about going to chiropractic school because I was 26
Mm.
and people were already out of school and I had already gotten a degree and I'm too old to go back. And, so it's funny how those thought systems work no matter how old you are. You
Yeah,
just keep thinking you're
it
too
can
old.
really it can really be a cycle. So you were kind of on this gerbil wheel of gaining and losing and
Yeah,
enter your hormones just kind of, throwing another monkey wrench into the situation.
that's right.
What was the aha moment that said to you, okay, this is affecting me personally. I'm also in a place where I don't know if I want to do all of the career stuff that I've been doing for the last 30 years. I'm going to pivot. What was that point?
I think there were a couple points. Number one is that I was looking into a different career and I was looking into life coaching. And I started understanding a little bit more about coaching. I started with Martha Beck, and I realized how much how we think affects what we create. And I know it's not just in coaching that you can figure that out, but that was uh, a big topic with her. And I met a weight coach there. I never heard of a weight coach before, but she did a group retreat. And the first question that she asked, and this is really the aha moment, is when, because I thought, well, she's going to talk about like what what to eat and how to eat and when to eat, because I don't know what's going on here, but I got a problem. And all she said was, why do you eat when you're not hungry?
Mm,
And do you know when you're hungry? And do you know when you're full? And do you listen to those cues?
mm,
Well, I think I'm a pretty smart woman. I thought that was the most stupid question I ever heard in my whole life because what is that going to, how's that going to help me? I
mm.
mean, really, this is my brain going in the beginning because I was like probably most people out there, like, just tell me what to do, how to do it, and tell me what the problem is here. Why can't I do what I've always been doing? But because I was really working on the whole idea of mindfulness and the whole idea of, what are you thinking when you sit down to eat? And I was only thinking, okay, I get this many points
Mm.
and I just want to make sure I get them all. I never even thought about, well, how hungry am I? How full am I? I just wanted to be as hungry as I could be. And I wanted to get as full as I could get for the amount of points that I could get and weigh or lose weight or whatever it is that I wanted to do. And when I wasn't on Weight Watchers, the only thing I wanted to do was to have quote unquote freedom to
Mm.
eat whatever I wanted to eat because I knew I was going to gain weight again and I would go back and do my same thing again.
So when you were counting the points, would you say that you were not necessarily enjoying what you were eating, or you were, not doing it in a way that felt like it was satisfying?
I think I probably thought I was at the time, but I can say for sure that all I cared about what I was afraid of not getting full enough. I was
Mm.
just afraid of going hungry.
Hmm.
I was afraid of diets. And the reason I like Weight Watchers is because they had this point system and I could figure out how to eat few points and eat a lot of it.
Hmm.
And,
You
you
were
know,
you were really into it, like just by doing that, you were actually probably getting a lot of, fiber rich, low calorie, high, density
yes,
foods,
I
right?
mean, I feel like I learned a lot from Weight Watchers too in a very positive way that I still sticks with me. But I was depending on an external source
Hmm.
to tell me what my body needs. And I wasn't listening to my body. I only cared that I was either losing weight or I didn't care if I was gaining weight. That was the connection that I had. And when I met this weight coach and actually started sitting down to eating and going, well, am I hungry? I notice sometimes, well, maybe I'm not. Why am I eating?
Hmm.
Well, because it's time and you get a lot of points. And, what is full? And how much do I need to be full? And so I came up with this physical hunger scale, which goes from a -0, I mean, a -10 to a +10. -10 is starving, +10 is stuffed. And I created this window of eating at a -2 and stopping at a +2. Now, a +2, you could eat to a +10. But a +2 to me, when I was figuring this out, is probably the way that we were wired to start eating and stop eating. And, I kind of made it up. But at the same time, I really realized that we can eat so much more than we need. And we can wait so long before we eat. And we can really mess with those numbers. We can say we're hungry when we're a -8, or we can say we're full and we should stop, but we're at a +8. But we're so used to doing that that we don't realize what we're actually doing because we're just calling ourselves hungry and full.
So are you saying that this approach is really more, would you call it more intuitive versus an approach where people are counting macronutrients and
Yes,
tracking
yes,
their
no,
intake?
I don't, I think it's all about, I don't I think it's exactly intuitive eating. I think it's more just reconnecting to your body and knowing what hunger and fullness is for you. And you can call it intuitive, but I don't really think it's intuitive eating because I don't think that your body will, I mean, like, what does my body need? You know, I had my clients saying in the beginning, well, my body really felt like it needed, something sweet. I don't know that our bodies are needing something sweet, but I know our brains are needing a lot of things. And it's very easy to mix up what the brain's doing and what the body's doing. And I think what I really work on is this connection of the brain and the body so that you use your brain to decide when it's time to eat by connecting into the body and helping it along in the beginning. Because if you were anything like me, I had no connection. I had a point system. I had no idea what this was.
Mm.
And I would say most of the people that I work with in the beginning, the thing they're most excited about with working with me is learning their hunger scale,
Mm.
like how to eat when you're hungry and stop when you're full. And to me, that astounds me that that's so interesting.
So when you start working with a client,
Hmm.
is there usually a questionnaire or something that you go through with them to find out what their current habits are? I know from my past years of health coaching, there's this intake form, and you basically evaluate where they've been and where they're potentially going. It, can you share with us a little bit about the level of understanding or knowledge of food and nutrition that your clients have, just generally speaking? On a scale of 1 to 10, would you say they have a good nutrition background or
Yes.
not necessarily?
No, I would say almost everybody I work with were like me. They had a good nutrition background. It's just that it didn't matter when it
Mm.
came to emotional eating and doing the shenanigans that I did, that they do. They know. They know. I don't have to tell people what to eat. The people that I work with know what to eat. It's just they don't want to do what they know.
And so talk us through your system and help us understand the nuances of how the system works.
Okay. Well, first of all, we start with this physical hunger scale. So in the beginning, it's just about journaling. And when I say food journaling, most people get a very bad taste in their mouth because, well, like at Weight Watchers, that's what I did all the time. But it had more to do with how many points I was eating. And what I want people to do is just to write down what you're eating and how hungry you are before you start to be able to give numbers and how full you are when you're done on the physical hunger scale.
That's a little bit, I would say, a little subjective. Well, it's very subjective because a number, maybe, you said a -8 is like starving.
Mhm.
For me, like maybe my idea of what starving means is different from someone else. Does that matter, that subjectivity?
You know what I think? I think the more they start doing it, the more they start connecting because what I want them to connect with is the physical sensations of what they're feeling when they call it a number.
Hmm.
So that if they call something a 2, a -2, I want them to be able to describe a little bit about what that feels like as opposed to if they put a -8, what does that feel like? So I guess it's subjective, but I also think it's a connection. It's like if you've never done that before, you start noticing this feels very different. And when you say you're starving and you have a scale from 0 to -10, call it a number. And I always tell my clients, we're just going to guesstimate because most people will say, I have no idea.
Hmm.
That's what most people will say. I go, of course you don't, but you're going to guess.
So
And Mhm.
when it is time to eat, when people have kind of gotten a better idea of their sensations and what their actual satiety and their actual hunger levels, are you then guiding them on what to actually eat?
I'm not. Um, but what I do is I have what I call the 4 types of eating. And one type of eating is fuel eating. One type of eating is joy eating. One type of eating is fog eating, and one type of eating is storm eating. And there's four different types. Fuel eating is eating what you believe to be nutritious foods for your body. So I think, and after doing this for 15 years, most people mess around with what they think is fuel. And so I'll say, well, is that fuel or is that joy? So a joy eat is a non-nutritious food that you like that just tastes good. And I really believe both of them can be in your diet.
Definitely. Sure.
And fog eating is basically when you're doing either of those two types of eating and overeating. And storm eating is when you're doing either of those two types of eating, but it's way overeating. Way. So, a fog could be maybe you're going up to a +4 or +5, but a storm or a binge is when you're really pushing the limit. So it's a very strong number and a very emotionally charged number. But at least this is what I find is that like when I start questioning, well, is that fuel or joy? Though sometimes people will say, well, it depends. But it doesn't really depend. Fuel is fuel. Nutritious food is nutritious food all the time. It doesn't matter. And joy eating or joy food is joy food all the time. It doesn't matter. But sometimes, like you can fuel eating nutritious food, but you're not hungry. So if you put a fuel eating, but you're at a zero when you start eating, it doesn't matter if it's fuel. You shouldn't be eating.
Are most of your clients in a certain age bracket?
Yeah, my process is called thinner peace and menopause.
So it's menopausal women.
Yes, it's menopausal women mostly, and it's for women who've been struggling with weight their whole life, not just in menopause, but menopause is making it harder than ever to lose the same weight that they've been trying to lose for the last, like me, 20 or 30 years.
Yeah, so I'll just give you an example. I have, been doing what I do, I'll just say clean eating for the
Yeah.
most part
So
with,
we'll call it fuel eating,
yeah, fuel
nutritious
eating
food.
for the most part, but then I observe like the 90-10 rule. Um,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
so what happened just like I'm going to say within the last year is I've noticed my weight creeping up
Yep.
and my body fat increasing, even
Mm-hmm.
though my food has been steady.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not necessarily been a matter of changing how I eat. It's, I believe, hormonally driven.
Mm-hmm.
Are you able to discern the difference between like when you're counseling your clients, if they actually have a hormonal issue that might be affecting their weight gain versus a habitual or state of mind kind of situation, or do the two get really entwined? I could see how the two would get entwined as well.
Yeah, but like what happens sometimes is like they'll get to the point where they're eating between the twos, mostly fuel food, and maybe they're not losing any weight, or maybe they're gaining a little bit of weight, something like that. And a lot of times it can be hormonal, in which case I would refer them to somebody who could work with that. But it's not usually what I see.
Hmm,
I know hormones are involved. We're talking menopause,
right.
but we're also talking about a lifestyle that's been this way for a long time. And when you're in menopause, whatever you've been doing for the last 20 or 30 years is going to blow up in your face, is what I think happens.
Hmm.
Like you can mess around up until you're about 50. I call what I was doing messing around. And
Messing with your metabolism, just to be
just
clear.
like what I could do in my 20s, if I even told you what I did in my 20s, you would wonder how I'm even alive. But you can do that in your
Yeah,
20s,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, there's a
But
lot more flexibility for sure. And
I think that's the best way to say it.
and where I see sometimes this backfire is when women try and get too restrictive. So sometimes they'll literally starve themselves, cut back
Right.
to the extreme in order to try and attempt to lose the pounds.
Hmm.
How do you handle that? How do you handle finding that balance of not going from one end to ricocheting to the other?
Teaching the physical hunger scale and eating when it's time to eat, and really believing, and it's something that I work on a lot. Number one is that, and you probably have this even with your 90-10 rule, is that you probably believe you can eat whatever you want. It's just what do you want and what do you want the results to be?
Hmm.
And most people, like myself, I didn't believe that I could eat whatever I wanted unless I wasn't on a diet and it was okay for me to gain weight. And what I want to teach is that you have to tell yourself you're never going to go hungry again.
Hmm.
Because when you know you're not going to go hungry and you can believe and you can not have the feeling of restriction is a feeling. Deprivation is a feeling. It comes from something that you're thinking. I can't eat that.
It
Shouldn't
it
have
must
that.
it must also go back to our, some sort of DNA part of us that lives in the back of our brains where we've had to survive. We've had to survive and maybe hunt and forage, and there were days that there was no food, and then there were days that we'd catch and we'd eat, and then we weren't sure when the food was coming next. Do
Hmm.
you think that somehow that's trapped that ancestral,
No,
I don't know even what to call it, but something
no,
in
I don't
there
think with the
that,
people that I work with that that's what the problem is. I think what I think most of the problem is coming from 30 years of restricting and depriving yourself. Seriously restricting and making yourself go hungry to lose weight and thinking that it's the only way for you to lose weight and believing that you have to feel that way in order to lose weight.
hmm, how long does
And
it take on your program before people or before you start to see people getting the results they want? What is the time frame of like an average client?
the results meaning what?
Them getting to the point where they understand their hunger scale and they're able to adjust their eating habits.
I would say understanding their physical hunger scale, 6 weeks, something like that. The emotional hunger scale, which we really haven't talked about, it's once you understand the physical hunger scale, then you're dealing with if you're eating when you're not hungry and you know that, like, say, like, you're at a +2 and you want to eat anyway, because that's what happens. That's why what's going on usually is that at least when I was on Weight Watchers, I didn't think I could, I didn't think about hunger and fullness. I just thought like when the points are over. But here, really what the notice is that once they see they're at a +2 and they know they're not physically hungry and they want to still eat enough to eat it, then we're dealing with a different component.
So that's the emotional piece
And
of your
that's the
scale.
emotional hunger component, emotional hunger scale, which is a totally different scale. It looks the same, but it's like once you have your physical hunger numbers down and you know it's time to stop, but you don't want to,
Mm,
then you're dealing with what we call emotions or urges. And emotions can be anger, it can be sadness, or it can be urges, just plain an urge. Like, for instance, you're at a meal, it's very, very good, you're really enjoying it, you know you're done, your body says stop, and you say, it's delicious. And you think, without really being aware, that you saying this is delicious gives you the freedom or the permission to continue to eat because it's delicious. Who wouldn't keep eating if something was delicious?
mm,
Until you question, why are you thinking that? Like, if it's delicious and you're full, you stop. So you take a 3-year-old They can be enjoying their food and eating it up like crazy, but you try and give them one more bite and they're not hungry, they'll throw it in your face. They're not going to eat it.
I always say you could eat, you could sit down and eat easily, 1,000 calories of cake, but try and do that with broccoli or spinach. I mean,
Exactly.
it's not really possible. So there is really a brain to palate connection that, when your pleasure center is stimulated,
Yes.
ability to just stop really becomes a,
Harder.
a test of will. And
It's
I would think that
harder.
that's really hard for people.
I think it's manageable if you're aware and you're making the choice.
Mhm.
So, like when I think about, and I do think it's harder. And I totally agree with you that what it does to the brain and the pleasure center is it's like your brain's going, yum, 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 let's keep going, let's keep going. But that's just a certain part of your brain. And so you have, your primal, I mean, uh, the smart part of your brain that knows what's going on, your awareness part knows what's going on all the time. And when you're more aware of what's going on, so like when I define a joy eat, it's a non nutritious food that you enjoy bite by bite and stop the minute you're through enjoying it. And the enjoyment factor of those foods, and this is a good thing because this is the question you asked me, were you enjoying your food when you were eating it?
Mm,
And I think a lot of people who eat these joy foods aren't enjoying themselves because they don't even think they should be eating them. And
mm,
they're doing it emotionally. They're trying to either fill an urge or feel anger or feel sad, feel some kind of hole. And there's no enjoyment really in it
mhm.
because they're not paying attention. That's not what they're doing.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of emotions that come into play when people eat. Like you said, it could be sadness, it could be
Yes,
frustration, anger,
yes, yes.
joy. I mean, so many things that
I don't
motivate
think
us.
joy.
I think people eat when they're happy.
I don't.
Really.
Mm-mm.
I've
No, and a lot of my
As a
clients,
chef, I've seen it many times.
I know, but what I say to my clients is this, is that it can be a very happy occasion eating a lot of beautiful food, but your body still has a stopping point and
Sure. Yes.
it's telling you.
Yes.
And for you to go against it is not happy, happy, joy, joy.
No,
There's
I mean,
something
I
going
think
on.
we definitely have a stopping point, but what I'm saying is the motivation to sit down at a table and consume food can come from a variety of different places. Are there any tools that you use or you've seen used where people can maybe redirect that as well? I know I've heard people talk about eating slower. I've heard about people saying drink more water. Sometimes hunger is actually thirst, and we tend to turn to food when we're actually thirsty. Or sometimes people will say, make sure instead of taking, the bag of chips to the couch, put a serving into a bowl instead of eating from something where you don't know what you're eating. Are there any tools that you use or have seen work? Just an example of one that has been effective?
Well, I think the biggest one that's effective is becoming aware that what is going on with you is that you have a physical sensation to stop and you can see that your mind wants to keep going and that is something that you can control. Like, I don't think you need to drink water. I don't think you need to take the cup or the bowl or whatever. I'm not saying it's okay, but I want people to believe that they have it within themselves that they can become aware enough and stop because they're done. And other people can be eating and there can be beautiful food around and you don't have to eat it. And I think it can absolutely, I think it's a natural thing for the body in the end to when you're full, you're full. And
What about what they say about junk food, though? And I'm not encouraging people to eat processed food, but if there are truly no foods that are off limits, we know that a lot of these processed foods are designed to just be consumed and they don't actually trigger any fullness. You could eat a whole bag of chips and not feel full.
Mhm.
How do we approach that? Are there foods that we really should not add in at all?
Well, I think it's kind of what you're talking about when you said you have a 90-10 rule. So with joy eating, what I try to incorporate is the idea of 80% fuel, 20% joy. So if you're going to be putting a lot of joy into your meals, you are going to have a problem and it's going to show up on your food journal.
Hmm.
So it's like, I absolutely agree with you.
Okay, with the few minutes we have left,
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about GLP-1s.
Uh-huh.
They are really kind of ubiquitous these days,
They
and
are.
we know that they're affecting people's appetite. How do you how do you react to that?
Well, I think the most interesting thing about it is that it targets the brain, which I find so interesting because the process that I use trains the brain. So we're both working on the brain,
Mm,
except that we're working on repetitive things with the brain, and it's a medicine that's being used that targets the brain that does it for it. And the problem with that is that if you stop taking it, or you try to do something with it and not take it anymore, you're left with the same food noise that you had before. And food noise is something that I think came up more with the GLP-1s using that word. And in my process, I talk about urges, the urge to want to eat when you're not hungry, the urge to eat too many joy eats because your brain's telling you something.
mm,
And you can manage that by training it with some of the things that we've been talking about, or you can not do any of those things and just use a medicine that'll do it for you as long as you're using the medicine. And maybe for some people, that's exactly what they need.
mm,
But I also know a lot of people just need some training on their brain and some awareness of what's actually going on, if
mm.
that makes sense.
Yeah, does make sense. You kind of have to understand the behavior in order to help
Yeah,
yourself, whether you're on the medication or not. Where can
right.
people find out more about your program, Dr. Deb?
Well, one of the places is since I have a podcast called Thinner Peace and Menopause, you can actually get the companion guide that goes with it by going to Peace with Deb. And the companion guide includes some of the things that I've been talking about with you today. And the podcast talks about the different techniques that I'm talking to you about today so that you could use the two together to start understanding your own physical hunger scale, your own emotional hunger scale. And I've had so many comments, so many reviews from people who I've never talked to
Mm,
that just listening to the podcast has helped them use these techniques that I've been talking about. And the thing that seems to encourage them the most is that it's possible that they've just never checked in with their body, or am I hungry or am I full? So that's kind of the beginning. And then, of course, you can go to my website, debbutler.com, and everything is on there. But I think the podcast is a great place to start.
that's wonderful.
Yeah,
So much great information
thank
and
you.
really just trusting that your body knows. I think when we can tap in and almost have that internal conversation, a lot of answers can bubble up to the surface. Dr. Deb, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Same here.